In this lecture, we're going to be learning about infinite loops. And these are loops that are going to run forever and never stop. Here we have an example of the loops we have seen so far. We have seen the for loop, we have seen the while loop, and the do while loop, but we're just going to use these examples to explain whatever it is we want to explain here. And the main thing we want to focus on is this end condition here. So this is the thing that is going to control the stop of the loop. And for while loop, the loop is going to stop whenever I stops being less than count. And for the for loop here, the loop is going to stop when I stops being less than 10. And this is going to be the test that is going to force our loop to stop. And it is going to stop, and we're going to start doing whatever is after the loop in our code. But it is possible to make these loops run forever or indefinitely. And you can do it like this for our for loop. The way to do that is to omit the test condition. You see that we have a semicolon, and after that we have another semicolon. Then we're going to put our incrementation, and in front we have our iterator, which is declared and initialized to 0. So if we run this code, it is going to run forever and it's not going to stop. And hopefully you can guess why, because the loop doesn't have a way to test if it should stop. So it's going to run forever, and the compiler is probably going to assume that you don't want this loop to stop, so it is going to make it run forever. The same thing can be done for the while loop, and the syntax is a little different. The way we do that, we just say that the condition to stop is true. So while true, the loop is going to run, and it is going to run forever. We can do the same for do while loop, and if we do that, we're going to set our test condition to true, and the loop is going to run forever, and it's not going to stop. You're going to keep seeing it printing things on the console, and it is not going to stop. But we have seen that in the terminal, if you hit Control-C, the operating system is going to stop your program and make it terminate, and it's not going to keep doing all these crazy things here. Okay, so infinite loops are something that most times occur by error. For example, if your test condition is messed up, it is possible that your program is going to keep looping forever. But sometimes you really want to do something that at least looks like an infinite loop, because you want your program to keep looping around, waiting for things to happen. And we're going to see an example of that in the next lecture. But for now, let's head over to Visual Studio Code and actually try these infinite loops out. Okay, here we are in our working folder. The current project is infinite loops. We're going to grab our template files and bring them in place. Let's do that. Infinite loops. And we're going to open this up in Visual Studio Code pretty quick. We are going to open our main CPP file and put in the code we want to play with. The first thing we're going to see is how we can do an infinite loop using for loop. And the way we do that, we're going to say for size ti. We're going to initialize this, and we're going to leave out the test condition, and we're going to put in whatever incrementation we want. And after that, we're going to say, I love C++, what we've been saying all along. Okay, so this is a valid C++ program. You see that the IDE or the editor is not complaining. And if we build this, we're going to get a clean build. So you see that the build is good. And if we run this, let's bring up a terminal so that we can see that we don't want to run the task. We want to bring up a new terminal. We have already built, so we should have our rooster file in here. So it is right here. Let's clear again and run it. You see that it's going to keep printing I love C++ here. And it is keeping printing, but the console here is not updating. But if we try to scroll, you're going to see that it is continuing to print here, and it is not going to stop. The only way we have to stop this program is by clicking in the terminal here and hitting Control-C. That's going to force it to stop. You see that we got back our terminal, but it is going to print indefinitely, and it's not going to stop if you don't stop it. Okay, so this is one way we can do an infinite loop. Okay, I think now it wasn't really clear that this loop was running indefinitely, so let's try to print I, because we are initializing I to 0, and we are incrementing it, so we should be able to see the number I changing each time the loop gets in the body here, and we should be able to see more interesting output here on the console. So let's do that. We're going to print I inside here. We're going to say I, and we're going to put a colon, for example, here. And if we build and run this again, we're going to build with GCC. The build is going to be good. And we're going to clear and run Rooster. You're going to see now the numbers are going up, and it is running indefinitely. It's not going to stop. It would even hit 1 billion times if you wait for it so long. So we are going to kill it by hitting Control-C or Command-C on a Mac, and it's going to stop. And we're going to see how we can do the same things using a while loop. But before we do that, let's see if we put a true in here, we get an error. Okay, so this is another way you can do this. You can say my test condition is always going to be true, and the loop is going to run the same way it's running here. So this is another way you can do this. Let's try to build again. And we are going to clear and run Rooster. And you're going to see that it's going to run indefinitely. It's never going to stop. Hit Control-C to stop this. And we're going to comment this out. And we're going to do another version of this using a while loop. So we're going to say what we want to do here. So we are going to say what we want to do here. We're going to do an infinite loop using while loop. And the way we're going to do that, we're going to say size t. We're going to put in our iterator, which is going to be initialized to 0. And then we're going to say while. And then we're going to say while true. The test is going to be made to be true. So this is going to cause the loop to run indefinitely. We're going to go inside, we're going to put in our message, and we're going to put in our incrementation, which is going to be ++I, and this is going to run forever. We can try and build this. We're going to build with GCC to make sure we have no problems with our code, and we're going to clear the terminal. Let's put the number here again so that we see the loop incrementing each time we get in here. So we're going to say stdc out I, and we're going to say colon here so that we have some nice output. We're going to build again to get this updated in our binary, which is called rooster.exe. Let's run this, and you're going to see that we see the same thing, only now we are using a while version of an infinite loop. So this is something you can do if you want to do this. We are going to kill this because we don't want to wait for this forever. And we're going to comment it out and see a version using do while loop. It's going to be mostly the same. We're going to be changing a few things a little bit, but that's what we're going to do here. So we can grab actually our code here. We don't want to type all this again. So let's go down and paste that in. We want to use do while loop, and we're going to have this removed because we don't want this commented out. We're going to use our iterator here. Let's go down so that it is clear. And we're going to say do, and we're going to fall in the loop. And we're going to say the same thing we said in our while loop, which is going to be printing out I love C++. We're going to be printing the current value of I, and we're going to increment. But the while thing is going to show up after the closing curly brace here, and the end condition or the test is going to be true, and this is going to force our loop to run forever. Let's put a line here between this semicolon and return and bring the code up a little bit. We're going to bring up our terminal so that we can see things happening. We're going to build with GCC. The build is going to go through. We're going to clear and run Rooster. And you're going to see that it is going to say, I love C++ once, and it's going to stop here. Why is that? It's not saying anything because we messed up our output statement here. We didn't put it inside our loop here. So let's fix this up. We're going to grab this and put that inside our do while loop in the body. And we're going to bring this up a little bit. And we're going to try and build again. Hopefully we're not going to make the same mistake. And we're going to clear and run Rooster. And it is going to do exactly what we want. It is going to print forever, and it's never going to stop unless we hit Control-C to stop it. This is really all I wanted to share in this lecture, and you have to make sure and check if your loops are not running indefinitely like this. And this is mostly going to come from the errors you make in your evaluation of the stop condition. If you make things up, that might be always true, and your loop is going to run forever, and that might not be what you really intended. So watch out for this. But sometimes infinite loops may come in handy in your program, especially in cases where you want it to keep looping around and waiting for things to happen. And we're going to see an example of that in the next lecture. Go ahead and finish up here and meet me there.